everybody. Welcome back to my classroom. It's so good to see you today. We're going to pick up right where we left off with our book Crenshaw by Catherine Applegate. I hope you're enjoying it so far. I know some of the parts of the books might be confusing for you if you've never had to be hungry before because you didn't have food at your house, or maybe your parents have never had issues with money before. But that is just something that you can feel really lucky about. If those are things that you have dealt with before, then you can probably relate to Jackson. And those things can be tough sometimes. But really, if you have your family, that does mean everything. So that's something that we talked about in the last chapter. Where we left off last time, Jackson's family, they were trying to raise some money for some bills that they owed money for, and they're going to have a yard sale. And Jackson kind of felt a little bit discluded from his family. He felt like he didn't really fit in with his family because he's not as cheerful as them. He doesn't look the same. So we'll see if it gets better in the next chapter for him. Chapter 9. I love my mom and dad, and usually my sister. But lately, they've been really getting on my nerves. Robin was a little kid, so of course she was annoying. She'd say things like, "What if a dog and a bird got married, Jackson?" Or sing, "The wheels on the bus go round and round," 3,000 times in a row. Or steal my skateboard and use it for a doll ambulance. The usual little sister stuff. My parents were more complicated. It's hard to explain, especially since I know this sounds like a good thing, but they were always looking on the bright side. Even when things were bad, and they'd been bad a lot lately, they'd joke. They'd acted silly. They pretended that everything was fine. Do you know what that means, to look on the bright side of something? So even though something bad can happen to you, you can still look on the bright side and find a little something good in it, right? Sometimes I just wanted to be treated like a grown-up. I wanted to hear the truth, even if it wasn't a happy truth. I understood things. I knew way more than they thought I did. But my parents were optimists. That means they looked at half a glass of water and figured it was half full, not half empty. Not me. Scientists can't afford to be optimists or pessimists. They just observe the world and see what it is. They look at a glass of water and measure 3.75 ounces or whatever, and that's the end of the discussion. Take my dad. When I was younger, he got sick. Really sick. He found out he has this disease called multiple sclerosis. Mostly he has good days, but sometimes he has bad ones when it's hard to walk and he has to use a cane. When he learned he had MS, my dad acted like it was no big deal, even though he had to quit his job, which was building houses. He said he was tired of listening to hammering all day. He said he wanted to wear fancy shoes instead of muddy ones. And then he wrote a song about it called "The Muddy Shoes Blues." He said he might work from home, so he taped a sign on the bathroom door that said, "Office of Mr. Thomas Wade." My mom put a sign next to it that said, "I'd rather be fishing." And that was that. Sometimes I just want to ask my parents if my dad is going to be okay, or why we don't always have enough food in the house, or why they've been arguing so much. Also, why I couldn't have been an only child. But I don't ask, not anymore. Last fall, we were at a neighborhood potluck dinner when Aretha ate a baby's disposable diaper. She had to spend 2 nights at the vet's until she pooped it out. "Poop in, poop out," my dad said when we picked her up. "It's the cycle of life." "The cycle of life is expensive," my mom said, staring at the bill. "Looks like rent's going to be a little late again this month." When we got to the car, I came right out and asked if we had enough money for stuff. My dad said not to worry about it, that we just were a little financially challenged. He said sometimes it's hard to plan for everything unless you have a crystal ball and can see the future. And if I knew someone with a crystal ball, he would love to borrow it. My mom said something about winning the lottery, and my dad said if they won the lottery, could he please get a Ferrari? And she said, how about a Jaguar? And then I could tell they wanted to change the subject. I didn't ask any more hard questions after that. Somehow I just knew my parents didn't want to give me hard answers. Sometimes your parents just want to take care of you, and if they're having a difficult situation to deal with, they might not want you to know about it because they don't want you to worry. But it can be kind of frustrating for kids like Jackson or maybe even you who feel like they want to be treated like an adult and they want to know those things. Chapter 10. After I got ready for bed, I lay out on my mattress and thought things over. I thought about the stuff I'd put in my keepsakes bag. Some photos, a spelling bee trophy, a bunch of nature books, my teddy bear, a clay statue of Crenshaw that I'd made when I was in second grade, my worn out copy of A Hole is to Dig. I thought about Crenshaw and the surfboard. I thought about the purple jelly beans. Something fun to think about after you're done reading for today would be, what would you put in your keepsakes bag? If you had to leave your house for some reason, or you had to get rid of a lot of your belongings, what are some key things, your favorite things that you would put in your keepsakes bag? Mostly though, I thought about the signs I'd been noticing. I'm very observant, which is a useful thing for a scientist to be. Here is what I'd been observing. Big piles of bills. Parents whispering. Parents arguing. Stuff getting sold, like the silver teapot my grandma gave my mom and our laptop computer. The power going off for 2 days because we hadn't paid the bill. Not much food except peanut butter and mac and cheese and a cup of noodles. My mom digging under the couch cushions for quarters. My dad digging under the couch cushion for dimes. My mom borrowing toilet paper rolls from work. The landlord coming over and saying, "I'm sorry," and shaking his head a lot. It didn't make sense. My mom had 3 part-time jobs. My dad had 2 part-time jobs. You'd think that would add up to 2 whole actual jobs, but it didn't seem to. My mom used to teach music at a middle school until they cut her job. Cutting your job means they had to get rid of it for some reason, sometimes because they don't have enough money to pay you. Now she worked as a waitress at 2 restaurants and as a cashier at a drugstore. She wanted to get another job teaching music, but so far nothing had come up. After my dad had to quit construction work, he started a handyman business. He did small fix-it stuff, but sometimes he wasn't feeling well and had to cancel appointments. He also gave private guitar lessons, and he was hoping to go to community college part-time to learn computer programming. I figured my parents had a plan for making everything okay, but because parents always have a plan. But when I asked them what it was, they said stuff like, maybe they could plant a money tree in the backyard, or maybe they could start their rock band up again and win a Grammy Award. I didn't want to leave our apartment, but I could feel it coming. Even if nobody said anything, I knew how things worked. I'd been through this before. It was too bad because I really liked where we lived, even though we'd only been there a couple of years. Swan Lake Village was the name of our neighborhood. It didn't have any real swans, but all the mailboxes had swans on them, and the community pool had a swan painted at the bottom. The pool water was always warm. Mom said it was from the sun, but I suspected illegal peeing. All the streets in Swan Lake Village had 2 words in their names. Ours was Quiet Moon, but there were others like Sleepy Dove and Weeping Wood and Sunny Glen. My school, Swan Lake Elementary, was only 2 blocks from my house. It didn't have anything with swans on it. Swan Lake Village wasn't a fancy place at all, just a regular old neighborhood, but it was friendly. It was the kind of place where you could smell hot dogs and burgers grilling every weekend, where kids rode their scooters on the sidewalk and sold lousy lemonade for $1 a cup. It was a place where you had friends you could count on, like Marisol. You wouldn't have thought it was a place where people were worried, or hungry, or sad. Our school librarian likes to say you can't judge a book by its cover. Maybe it's the same way with neighborhoods. Maybe you can't judge a place by its swans. And that's where we're going to stop for today. I'll show you a sneak preview of our next page where we have Crenshaw back here visiting. So, just think about some of these hard topics in our book, right? We've been talking about maybe you can relate to them or maybe you can't. But just because you have or have not experienced something in life doesn't mean that we can't put our, self in somebody else's shoes and see what it might feel like to be like Jackson, for example. How would you feel if you were really comfortable living in your apartment with your family and you had a friend next door and you had all your things in your room that you liked, and then your parents said that we needed to sell some of that to make our rent, and they might ask you to move soon? How would that make you feel? I know that's a really difficult situation, so something for you to think about. It's really important to put ourselves in other people's shoes sometimes to see how they feel. So if you'd like to do your book response today, I will post a picture of this at the end. And thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time to read Crenshaw again. Bye, everybody.